Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our morning meeting. We're here this morning with Fern, our lovely barred owl ambassador. Good morning. We'll let people come on in and join us. Hello, everybody. Hi, Miss Fern. Good morning. Fern is molting a little bit, so apologies for her disheveled appearance, but she is she's also a new mom, so we can understand. Hello, lady. Hi. Yeah, so let me know if you're here. Leave a comment where you're from, and I'll give you guys a shout out. Good morning, everybody. Hi. Good morning. We'll let some people come on in. Hi, Fern. What do you think? Yeah. Oh, good morning, Jennifer. Hello. So Fern is our beautiful barred owl ambassador here at the Center for Wildlife. And she lives with her male companion, Byron, who's been with us for many years. Fern has been with us for probably around 2 years now, but she is very, very special and beautiful. Hello. Hi. Good morning, Katie. Hello. Yes, so she is molting right now. You can see all of this is kind of looking a little patchy. She has about like half of a tail, if you guys can see. She has some missing feathers around her face, but that is all normal for their for the time of year they are breeding right now. So they'll keep their plumage really nice until they have bred and had their babies, and then when they're in the nest and kind of in the thick of raising young is when they'll molt. So they start by losing a lot of their primary feathers, the long feathers of their wings, and then throughout the course of the summer they'll gradually lose more and more of those little tiny feathers you see around her face. It can actually make her look a little haggard when she loses the feathers around her eyes. It makes her look almost like she had she was out too late the night before. So so she is kind of in the midst of losing some of the denser plumage and down next to her body because it is starting to get warm, so she doesn't want to overheat. So she's going to be losing a lot of this downy stuff right now. Let's say good morning to everybody. Good morning, Nevitz in New Hampshire. Good morning, Zoe. Good morning, Chuck. Hello. Yeah, so Fern is here taking a little bit of a break while Byron babysits. Good morning, Michelle. Byron and Fern have a small little barred owlet in a crate in their enclosure, so they are not yet, it's not yet free flighted throughout the enclosure, but soon it will be, and it's probably around 3 weeks old at this point. It's still very fuzzy, still really cute, has minimal adult feathers, so it doesn't have these long feathers. It has mostly just downy fuzz all over it, so it looks like a little Muppet. And you got a little fly in your eye, I'm sorry. So this baby has been in with them for the last week or so and is very cute. And we put them in with Byron and Fern so that it can learn how to be a barred owl. It's really important for them to be raised by a member of their species. Even just seeing a member of their species goes a long way to helping them to learn what they are, what species they are. There are no reflective things out in the wild that they can look in and say, oh yes, I am an owl. They have to look at their parents. So we have Byron and Fern doing that for this little owlet. It would be really challenging, I think, if we didn't have them. We have this mask that we made up to kind of simulate an owl's face, but it's really never the same. Feeding a baby owlet as a human is always going to be a challenge, so we prefer to put them in with a foster pair if we can. So Byron and Fern have one baby right now, and then Gaia and Galileo, our great horned owls, have 2 babies who are much bigger and flying around the enclosure, so they have been really funny in there. But these guys have a little baby, and I was just going through some of the footage of what they're up to at night. We have a little Arlo camera in there with them. And the really cute thing is that even though this this cage is closed and the baby is, you know, contained, Miss Fern here is still really interested in what it's doing. It's still calling to, you know, making baby sounds, calling to mom. So she has been investigating quite a bit what's going on in that crate. She'll fly down and just perch on top of it, on top of the dog crate, and like look down into the little bars on the side. She'll fly across to a perch that looks into the enclosure and like do a lot of that owl focusing that you see where they swivel their heads around. So she has definitely shown interest in this baby, and we're excited to see how they start to interact once it comes out of that crate. We're really looking forward to it. Chuck says he loves barred owls. So they are one of the most common owl species that we have around here, and they're so great because they are really precocious. They're really vocal. They're really easy to identify. There are a lot of great things about them that make them a great first owl for a lot of people who are just getting into birding or owling. They're really accessible. So you see them a lot. They live very comfortably in somewhat populated settings. So in backyards, schoolyards, parks, things like that, you'll see a lot of them. They do really well next to people in developed areas. So you just see them quite frequently in places where we interact with wildlife. And it's similar to the way in which like squirrels are a lot of people's first foray into wildlife watching. Barred owls are, you know, so comfortable near people almost, and have adapted really well to living near people, that they do very, very well in those settings, and people often have really good success finding and locating barred owls. But they don't seem to mind our presence as much. So us being near them is not necessarily going to disturb or harass them as much as it might a shyer or more high stress species. So they're known for being very calm, for sitting in a tree for hours on end and calling for, you know, an entire evening. Which makes it easy to see them, and also easy to learn their calls, easy to learn to talk to them. They actually will answer to not entirely perfect calls. So if you're just learning how to make a barred owl call, which can be pretty tricky, these guys are pretty forgiving. So you don't have to be the best at it to learn. Zoe says, yep, barred owls were the first owls she remembers seeing as a kid. She is very calm, and that is just a thing with barred owls. They're very cool and collected birds. They tend to be very chill. Fern came to us because she was unfortunately hit by a car, and she unfortunately can no longer really go back out into the wild because she has some permanent neurological damage. So she does not act like a normal barred owl anymore. She tends to be very unafraid of people. So as you can see, she's really not responding much. And she just tends to sit and observe and doesn't really show any signs that she understands that people are predators or people, you know, you shouldn't let a person come up to you. She also doesn't really show that many signs of being with it enough to hunt on her own or do those important things to go out on her own in the wild. So she does live with us permanently now because of a permanent head injury, some permanent neurological damage. But she can fly very well. She can get around her enclosure really nicely. She can preen. She can feed herself when we like provide her with food. So I think she'll be safe and happy and healthy with us for the rest of her life. But in the wild, she just wouldn't be able to survive on her own. So she lives with us. Hi, lady. Good morning, Sarah. Hello. Good morning, Chuck. Hello, Holly. Hi. Hello. Yeah, so is there a dog somewhere? Oh my goodness. So you can see her turning her head to respond to noises. I'll point the camera at her. Oh, that's not a dog. It's Bertram. So Bertram is in an enclosure right behind me, and he likes to make barking sounds sometimes. So she just heard him barking and got a little confused. Okay. Hi, Miss Fern. Hello. What do we think this morning? So Miss Fern here hello, can turn her head quite a bit a ways around. You just saw her respond to Bertram's sounds that he was making as people walk around here on the center's campus as they're going about feeding ambassadors or animals. She will kind of turn to track them with her eyes and ears. So they can actually turn their heads about 270 degrees around, which is about 3/4 of a full circle. So she can turn her head to see all the way behind her, and then turn her head to see, come back to the front and go all the way back around the other way. So she is able to spin her head around quite a bit. Can you step up, honey? You are. I know. You get a beautiful view of your wings. There you go. You look uncomfortable. Can you step up? There you go. So she also does this thing with her feet where she doesn't tend to settle her feet very well. She doesn't tend to perch naturally. I know. That beak clack is just like a, hey, stop moving. That's how owls tell you that they're not pleased. And Fern usually only does 1 or 2. She's not very expressive or demonstrative with her when she's unhappy, so that tells me to just, like, she's fine the way she is. But owls will do a lot of things like that. They'll clack their beaks, they'll hiss, they'll do all sorts of things. I want to see if I can get a good view of her ear for you guys, because she has shown us the side of her head a couple of times. Hi, honey, you're so pretty. Good morning, Ricky in Texas. Good morning, Theo. Good morning, Sue. Chuck says he had a snowy fly to him at an airport. That is very cool. Snowies love airports because they mimic kind of the tundra setting that they're used to. So it's flat and open. There are also usually plenty of rats or mice or birds for them to eat. So they do quite well hunting at airports, and a lot of the most recent snowy owl research has come out of Logan Airport. So they are definitely drawn to that flat open tundra. But we also have several that will come to the Portland Jetport every year too. And usually the ones that are coming down here to our airports are younger, and then the older, more established ones will stay up north in the North Pole all winter long, which is crazy to believe. Hi, Sweet Pea. You are staring off into space. This is another thing that we noticed about Fern after her head injury, is that she does seem to kind of stare off into space and look a little dazed sometimes. But she is tracking somebody walking behind me, so that's a good sign. She's still aware of everything. Good morning, Ellen. Good morning, Zoe. Zoe, I also hope to see a snowy someday. I have actually not ever seen one. Even living in York, and I used to work in Rye, and I still never got to see one. So yeah, definitely one of my birds that I'm keeping an eye out for. Holly, this is about as big as she will get. So she is actually a full-grown female barred owl. So she is pretty large compared to a male. Usually they are larger than the males. They're the ones that are sitting on the nest, that are taking care of babies, defending babies. So they want to be big and tough and muscular enough to ward off predators. And then the male is the one that's flying off and hunting, needs to be very quick and agile, very light, so that he can stay airborne for a long time. So they tend to be much smaller than the females. So she's actually full grown. She's about 2 years old now. And she probably won't get much bigger than this. Can we adjust our feet? Your feet are so funky. Can you step up? Hi, step up. You're okay. There you go. There you go. Good job. Nice. Good girl. She's like, that Bertram is so loud. I know. And Chuck, they are not really that afraid of humans. They are very used to our presence, and very, I think because they're a larger species of owl, they don't worry too much about predation. They get pretty used to being big and tough baddies out in the wild. So, good morning, Ellen. Good morning, Paul. She does have beautiful eyes. So these guys are one of the few owl species that that have these dark chocolatey brown eyes. They are usually, in other owl species, they are usually like a cat's eyes. They're usually yellow or green or sometimes pumpkin orange in our famous eagle owls that live in Europe. But barred owls are one of the few owl species that have dark chocolatey brown eyes, and that is something that we see only in a very few species. So like barn owls and barred owls both have those brown eyes. A lot of people do confuse the two of those. So barn owls live in barns, are usually hunting in a big open field, are usually very tall and skinny and white and orange in color, and have a heart-shaped face. It usually comes to a point at the bottom. And then barred owls, which is what Miss Fern is here, are very different. They live in a forest setting. They are much more common around here, and in general. Barn owls, really, we don't see too much in our neck of the woods, although their range has been expanding quite a bit. They used to not really be historically seen in Maine at all. And, you know, we've seen them start to, you know, every so often we'll get one in Kittery, we'll get one in York County, but that's been more and more frequent. So they may be on the rise in Maine. But barred owls are certainly more common. They really love the mixed hardwood, softwood forest that we have here. They like a lot of watery areas. So any place that you have marshes or wetlands of any kind, these guys are going to really, really love. They love to eat things that frequent those areas. So they really like amphibians like frogs and salamanders. They love all of that sort of food. They also tend to be in those areas in the spring when they're very active and there are lots of food sources available to them and their babies. So they are very much a fan of the watershed area that we are on here at the center. We have tons of them around us, and they're very often calling to Byron and Fern, which is very cute. Good morning, Carolyn. Hello. Zoe, I'm not sure if you heard the what I just said about barn owls in Maine, but we get them occasionally. It's definitely becoming more common that we see them. Usually they're, you know, historically were not found in Maine, but we're seeing maybe one or two fly into the state in the southern part every so often. So I know a few years ago there was one in Kittery. And then certainly in southern Maine, you'll see more of those migrants coming across from Massachusetts, but they do tend to be more of a western species. They like big open farm fields, of course, and they are a little bit more southerly. So we might see more of them as climate change continues to increase the temperature here. We have seen a lot of species increasing their ranges up this way. So I would not be surprised if barn owls started expanding more and more into Maine. Screech owls actually have been doing this for a while. Well, they'll stay in Maine for the winter because it's a lot more mild here in southern Maine. So we certainly can expect to see more of them. She is so pretty. Chuck says he's only heard one vocal barred owl. So these guys, they are very, very vocal, especially in the early spring. So in March and April, they'll be very chatty, and they're known for their call. It sounds like someone saying, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all?" And that is, of course, in owl talk, so I'll try to do that quickly because it's not, I don't have the best at barred owl call, but they go, "Ooh, ooh, 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 ooh." Good girl. She had no reaction. So that is kind of the normal standard full-length call that you'd hear them doing to each other. If they're calling to a mate or if they're calling to mark the edges of their territory, that's the call they'll do. They'll also do a quick contact call to each other. That's kind of just the end bit of that. It's just a "Ooh." And then they also get into little territorial disputes with each other, especially males in the spring when they're figuring out who's going to live where. They will get into little kind of rap battles with each other, where they'll do something called caterwauling that sounds like monkeys. So they'll go and 2 or 3 of them will do that back and forth to each other and kind of yell at each other. While Fern's head is turned this way, I want to see if I can show you guys her ear really quickly. No? You're not going to let me? No? So she has very impressive ears, and I've been trying to figure out a way to show you guys them on Facebook Live, but she does tend not to let me. But they are located right here, like right behind her eye there, and then right here. You have a fly. And those ears are offset a little bit, so she can actually directionally hear really well. She can hear things that are close to her, or she can hear things that are above her or below her based on the direction of where she's hearing them. She can tell the difference based on which ear is picking up that sound first. So she can really, really easily triangulate her prey. And she, of course, you know, we're not going to push her to do anything that she doesn't want to do, but she does sometimes let us just gently show off her her ear, but we won't push her today. Oh, you're fine. You're a new mama. We won't push you. Let's see. Harriet, she is so pretty. Hello. Thank you so much, Holly, for your sweet words. Duncan and Mike, hello. Jackson, she is very good. She's a very good girl. Hello, Mary. Barred owls are pretty territorial, so especially in the spring when they're nesting, they're going to be pretty strict about only letting themselves and their mate in their territory. And then in the winter, they really are strict about it as well, because they are trying to eke out a living on whatever they can, and they're not going to share that with another owl. So they are very strictly territorial and don't share well. Hello, Thomas in Massachusetts. Hello, Ryan. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really appreciate all of you guys viewing these videos. It's really great that we're able to connect with you guys like this. I just wanted to quickly mention that there is a donation button on all of our videos, so if any of you are able to donate, we really appreciate the support. It goes to directly help care for Miss Fern, as well as the baby that she is fostering in the medical clinic right now, so we're very excited. She has been a really wonderful, so far, wonderfully interested mama for this baby, so we'll see what how she does when the baby comes out of its crate and explores the enclosure a little bit, but they're usually really receptive to having babies. They love it. Chuck, so the territory size of any animal is usually dependent on how rich that space is, so how dense it is in prey or in food or whatever it is that they need. So if a territory is sparse, they're going to need to travel farther to get their food. So it's hard to say exactly how much space a barred owl might need. It's going to depend on the richness of that habitat. These guys will usually occupy, I think it's like 5 acres, maybe. I have read all sorts of different numbers on this, and to be honest, they are always ranges. So it's always, you know, I would say from 1 acre to 2 acres if it's in a nice rich forest with plenty of food, with vernal pools and amphibians and things like that. And then it can go up to a much higher number if it's a sparse habitat. So there's always that caveat to those numbers. Good morning, Xander. Hello. She's doing well at fostering so far, Susan. We have not ever had a baby in with her before, so we'll see how she does. She's looking completely backwards now. Her head is completely turned backwards. She's like, Bertram, you need to stop yelling. Bertram is very excited about his breakfast. Bertram is our raven ambassador, for those of you who are not familiar with him, and he makes his hunger everybody's issue. So he's calling for his breakfast right now. Yes, so she has been fostering just for the last week, and really right now she's just kind of observing the baby from outside of a dog crate. The baby is still in there. It's too small really, but it will start venturing out into the enclosure a little bit this week, hopefully, so we'll see how they do. But we're excited to see her foster for the first time. Look at that. You're so good at turning your head around. Thank you, Julie, so much for your donation. That is really, really sweet. We very much appreciate it. All of our ambassadors here are fed as close to a natural diet as we can get it. So owls will get mice as well as enrichment foods that would be suitable for them. And sometimes those enrichment foods like chicks and quail and things can get pretty expensive. So thank you so much for allowing us to provide them with that. We're very fortunate to have our mice donated to us from Jackson Labs, and they save us about $26,000 a year just in mice. So they do a great job, but all of the other foods that we buy, that we purchase that aren't mice, can cost quite a bit of money. So your donations really go a long way to feeding and helping to keep safe and healthy all of our ambassadors, all of our patients. Thank you guys so much. Good morning, Ryan and Jessica in Chicago. Good morning, Susan. So Fern here is content to sit in the sun for as long as you guys want, so we can answer any questions that you have about Fern, about her adaptations, about, just one second. Okay. Sorry guys, just wanted to position the camera a little better with the sun. So any questions that you have about Fern, she is happy to answer. She's a sweet, sweet girl and is very content to hang out with us today. So please, if you have questions, let me know and I'd be happy to answer them. Barred owls are one of 14 species of owls that we have in Maine, so there are lots of other owl species that you might encounter, but they are probably the most common one that you would see. Usually when people say, I had an owl in my backyard, I'm gonna say probably it was a barred owl, just based on statistics, right? Jessica, that is a lot of mice. So we have usually over 2,000 patients every year that come through, not all of which eat mice, but many do. And then we also have our 30 ambassadors here at the center who get fed every day. So that is a lot of mice. Do I know how old she is, Zoe? So she is most likely 2 or 3 years old at this point. So she came to us in the winter, and she was a first-year bird during that winter. So we are able to tell based on her plumage and which feathers have been molted and which are new, that she is a first-year bird. So when they are adults, they won't necessarily molt all of their feathers every year. They'll molt them staggered, so that they can maintain their flight. But when they're babies, they're all new, so they all grow in super fast. And so when you get a first-year bird, you'll see all fresh new feathers, and when you get a second-year bird, you'll see some that have fallen out and have come in. So we know for sure that she was a first-year bird, and she has been with us for 2 years, so she's a third-year bird now. You're a 3-year-old. But they can live in the wild up to maybe 15 years old is pretty average. And then of course, once they get past the baby stage, once they get past their first year of life, that's how long they might live. The first year of life is really, really tough for all of our wild babies. And only about 80% of the babies that are hatched in the wild will make it to that first year. But once they get beyond that point, they could live up to 15. 18, and then in captivity they can live up to 30. There have been lots of older barred owls in captivity. They don't have to worry about predation or disease or not finding enough food, so usually they can live quite long lives in captivity. Our previous female barred owl, Bianca, lived to be 23, so we have a good track record with you guys, huh? Yeah. Let's see. Some more questions. Yeah, so Chuck has just mentioned that, hello, that their diet does change quite a bit throughout the year. So they'll eat what is broadly available. In the winter, that might be mice and small rodents running around under snowpack. And then in the spring, when all those amphibians come out, they will primarily eat those. Harriet would like to know when she will be able to live on her own. So Miss Fern here is a permanent resident at the Center for Wildlife. She's what we call an ambassador. All of our ambassadors are designated as non-releasable because of some sort of an injury that they have sustained, or because they were, raised inappropriately and don't know how to be a wild animal, things like that. So none of the ambassadors that we show you guys on our morning meetings can go back out into the wild, which is sad, but she really wouldn't be able to survive on her own due to some neurological damage that she sustained after a car collision. So she was hit by a car and got hit in the head and has some pretty bad neurological damage now, and that's part of why she sits here so calmly. In the wild, they would be flying away. They would be not happy to be this close to something that they see as a predator, right? That part of her brain just kind of got switched off. When she was a patient here, so we had her with us for a few months. I know there's a fly. I'm sorry, honey. When she was a patient here, she was in an enclosure with like 5 other barred owls. They were all patients. They were all rehabilitating together, and they would fly around whenever we went into their enclosure. They really didn't like people. They would, act like they were unhappy that we were in there. And Miss Fern here instead would just sit on the ground in the enclosure and kind of look up at us and say, "Oh, do you have food? That's great. Thanks. You can leave it right there." So we determined from her behavior that there was something going on, and then we did further exams and figured out that she had some pretty significant brain damage. Let's see. Darla. That's a great question, Darla. So Darla asks about parasites, tapeworms, fleas, things like that. Most of the parasites that occur in mammals don't usually survive in these birds, but they do get some. So coccidia is one that they can get, and then they also can get other ectoparasites, so parasites on the outside of their body, like lice, but they're called feather lice, and usually it's just a different type of mite or something like that. And that's something that we see in birds that are having a hard time. They're not preening as well. They might start to develop feather mites or feather lice. So they do get it, but usually it's just a different type. So we don't see tapeworms too much in these guys, but we do see other things like coccidia. So that is a really good, interesting question. She is still very young. Yes, so Chuck, they do lay their eggs pretty early. They lay them in like March and April, and then they take the whole entire summer to raise up their babies and get them out into the wild. She is always so chill, Jessica. Yep, this is how she always is whenever she's sitting on the glove here. You have a mosquito on your face. Good morning. Good morning, Jan in Rochester. Yes, so Cricket, I think she is just always aware of what's going on around her. So like there's somebody walking behind us, so she's going to turn her head that way. If I'm the only thing around that's talking and making noise, she'll look at me. So she does tend to get that mosquito away from you. She does tend to just look at whatever's nearby and whatever might be the closest thing to her. But she is very aware. Let's see. Laura tells a story about a barred owl that was visiting. So winters can be very tough for them, and last winter was actually particularly rough. I don't know if any of you remember, in our area we had this thing called, here I'm going to flip the camera so you guys can get a good look at her. We had this thing a couple of years ago people were calling like Squirrelmageddon, or the squirrel apocalypse. I remember, if you guys remember all the squirrels on the roads. That was just this big influx of squirrels. There were tons of them that were having a hard time finding food. So they were going to our roads looking for food, and that unfortunately led to a lot of them getting hit by cars. So we were seeing a ton of squirrels on the road. And that also caused a boom in barred owls that we were seeing either getting hit by cars or you know, having a hard time surviving the winter. So we saw this relationship between all those extra squirrels and all these barred owls that were having either a hard time surviving the winter because all of their squirrel prey had died the fall before, or were getting hit by cars because they were getting struck when they went to go hunt the squirrels that were on the road. So both of those things happened, and it did cause a big uptick in the number of barred owls that we saw last winter. Let's see. Good morning. I'm just trying to read the notes in the sun. She's stable now, Harriet, so she won't be able to go back out into the wild, but she is stable for now. She doesn't seem to have any degeneration or anything going on. Good morning, Darla. Good morning, Mary. So Mary says, do owls hunt for food all day long? Yes, so not usually. Most owls will hunt at night. They are nocturnal, so these guys are hunting in the dark, and that's why their vision is so amazing, to allow them to see at night. But barred owls are known to come out during the day, in the winter, especially when it's really cold at night and they don't want to expend all that energy flying around. They will come out during the day, especially if it's overcast or raining or something like that. So they are a little bit more bold and known to come out during the day. She is so cute. She can fly very well. So her injury is primarily to her head, so she doesn't seem to have any problems flying in the limited space in her enclosure. We haven't had her flying in a larger space, so she may struggle with that, but her flight doesn't seem to be that bad. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If anyone has any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. But otherwise, we're going to put Miss Fern back with her babies. Oh, Xander has a question. That's a really great question. So, Xander would like to know how we can support barred owls and encourage them to roost near us. So if you are hearing barred owls around, then that's a good sign that you might already have them near you. And they are known to use owl boxes, so kind of like a birdhouse. They are known to use an owl box. These guys are cavity nesters, so they like to nest in a hole in a tree that a woodpecker has pecked up. And you poor little thing getting bugs on your face. So they will use owl boxes. You can put one of those up. But the other thing you can do is just try to maintain the rodent populations around you to help support these guys, to feed them. So where there is prey, there is usually a predator. And the way that we can do that is if you have brush piles or like stacks of wood or anything like that, keeping those, maintaining dead tree snags whenever possible, trying to keep your space as wild as possible. That will help to promote like chipmunks and squirrels and things like that, and then those will attract these guys to the area to nest and to feed their babies. But if you already hear owl calls in your area, that's a good sign that they might already be there. And so, you know, keeping your ear out for those calls is another good way to get notified if you have owls nesting near you. Okay, thank you guys so much for all of your wonderful questions and engagement here. We're so grateful to be able to bring you guys this content. So we will be with you again tomorrow with another little owl friend. It'll actually be Kristen Brewster, our education fellow, our senior education fellow, who is back at work now, which we're really, really excited about. So she will be joining us tomorrow with another little owl buddy. So thank you guys so much. And we will look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your day.